Welcome back to her Fireside Stories. I found the forged deed the same day I nearly burned down my kitchen. Funny how disaster doesn't always come in flames. Sometimes it arrives tucked neatly in an envelope signed with your name. In handwriting that isn't yours, I raised my children with love with everything I had, and one day they sat at my table and asked me so gently to give up the home I built with their father. Before you forget, Mom, they said, but what they forgot was this. I may misplace my keys. I may forget the name of a flower, but I never forget who I am, and I never forget betrayal. This is the story of how a mother outsmarted her own children and left a legacy, not of money, but of defiance, dignity, and fierce, unforgettable love. I found the fake deed hidden under a pile of junk mail. The same day I almost lit the kitchen on fire. I turned away from the stove for 1 second, maybe 10, only to spin back and see flames leaping from a dish towel I'd tossed too close to the burner. For an instant, I froze. A million snapshots of my life flooded my mind. My wedding day, holding my newborn children, burying my husband Wallace 6 years ago. Then my body woke. I doused the small blaze and stood there panting soot on my cheek, the room smelling of charred cotton and regret. That's when I noticed the thick cream-colored envelope poking out from the chaos on my counter. The corner of it singed like it was trying to get my attention, or maybe trying to self-destruct. I had no idea how it ended up there. All my important documents stayed in a locked drawer. But I recognized the official seal, the county clerk's crest pressed in gold. Instantly, dread weighed on me. People my age, 70s silver hair pinned in a tight, low bun, don't get surprise envelopes from official offices unless something's very wrong. My name, Harriet Holloway, was spelled out in typed black letters on the front. No return address, no indication of what waited inside. My hands shook as I slid one finger beneath the flap. Inside lay a crisp deed transfer for my house, the home Wallace and I built from the ground up. Right there, bold as a siren, was a signature that looked like mine, but it wasn't. In that forged flourish, I felt everything I'd worked for in my life slip beneath my feet as though the floor were giving way. I took a shaky breath and glanced around the kitchen. The towels still smoked in the sink. My favorite porcelain mug lay shattered near the table leg. Steam from a pot of water curled upward, heavy with the taste of near disaster. If anyone had asked me how I felt in that moment, I wouldn't have had the words. Fear, betrayal, fury, maybe all three, because the children I'd raised, Jade, Gideon, and Rowan, were the only ones who might have forged my name. And if they wanted my house early, well, they were about to learn exactly who they were messing with. Before I made any assumptions, I reminded myself of the facts. I wasn't losing my mind. Yes, I'd been forgetting small things lately, like picking up salt at the grocery store or the name of that new neighbor who moved in across the street. But I knew my own signature, and I certainly knew I hadn't gifted my life's work to my own children before I was cold in the ground. I wiped my brow, smearing a smudge of ash across my forehead. My reflection caught in the microwave door, and for a moment, I almost didn't recognize the woman staring back. Deep lines around my eyes, hair that once shone black, now turned silver, and a determined set to my jaw that I'd inherited from my father, Stanley McAdams. He used to say, "Harriet, never show your enemy your fear. Smile at them like you know a secret." I inhaled deeply, letting his memory steady my nerves. I decided not to call Jade, Gideon, or Rowan right away. Instead, I slipped the forged deed into a clear plastic sheet protector, the kind Wallace used to keep our tax returns in. If my children were pulling strings, I needed to see the puppet show from the best seat in the house, gather proof, and figure out the real reason they wanted to strong-arm me out of my own home. It's not like we were strangers. My 3 children used to run circles in this very kitchen, chasing each other until I'd laugh so hard my sides ached. Jade, my eldest, kept her layered bob neat to fit her tidy professional image. Gideon, the middle child, had the same crisp parted haircut he'd worn since high school, always so polished. Rowan, the youngest, wore his hair shoulder length, now a casual style half pulled into a small ponytail, as though the responsibilities of adulthood had never quite landed on him. Each had a different temperament, but they were all mine or so. I'd believed. Gritting my teeth, I dropped the deed into my desk drawer and locked it. Flames in the kitchen, a forged signature in the mail. This house was on the brink of something explosive, and I wouldn't stand by to watch it burn. That evening, as the late autumn sun dipped below the horizon, I decided to do something I hadn't done in years, snoop in my own home. Wallace used to tease me about my detective streak, Harriet. He'd say, "If you weren't a paralegal back in your day, you would have made one hell of a private eye." He wasn't wrong. Before the kids were born, I worked for a small law firm in the city. I learned how to read between the lines, sniff out half-truths, and follow the paper trail. Now it seemed I'd need to dust off those old skills I started in the guest bedroom upstairs. Jade sometimes stayed there when she visited from her condo on the other side of town. Gideon, stoic and business-minded, rarely slept over. He had a place in the city. Rowan, who was never big on stable employment, crashed on the couch more than once after a night out with old friends. My grandchildren, well, they rarely joined them these days. Family gatherings had fizzled since Wallace passed. Pushing open the creaky door, I saw everything was in perfect order, as though staged for a magazine, fresh sheets, a neatly folded quilt, not a speck of dust. Jade's doing, probably. She liked everything to look pristine, especially when it wasn't actually hers. I scanned the room for anything that looked out of place. A folder, a stray document, a post-it note. Nothing next. I tiptoed into the little den that Gideon used as an office whenever he worked remotely. A faint smell of stale coffee lingered. On the desk lay a single black pen and a neat stack of note cards with Gideon's monogram. Opening the drawers revealed only bland office supplies, a few receipts and a half-eaten protein bar. Again, nothing incriminating. I tried to quell the paranoid sense that I was turning on my own children. But then I found a small slip of paper near the base of the lamp. It was a reminder for an appointment with a real estate agent. My heart beat faster. For all I knew, Gideon could have been casually house hunting for himself, but after finding that deed, I doubted it. I pocketed the slip, left everything as I found it, and eased out of the den. Just as I emerged into the hallway, I heard the front door open downstairs. My heart thumped. Voices, two of them, floated up through the foyer. I silently cursed the squeaky floorboards as I crept to the banister and peered down. Jade, her posture-rigid hair in that well-trimmed layered bob, was shrugging off her coat. Rowan, with his casual ponytail, lingered behind, hands in his pockets. What were they doing here, unannounced? I'm telling you, if we don't get her to sign those papers soon, Gideon's going to move on this without us. Jade hissed, voice low. The property values in this neighborhood are climbing so fast, we could make a killing if we get in at the right time. Rowan fidgeted, glancing at the family photos on the wall. I don't know, Jade, he muttered, voice uncertain. She's our mother. Are we sure this is the right thing to do? Jade's tone turned icy. Rowan, this isn't about right or wrong. It's about making sure we're in control before she, you know. Her words trailed off, but I didn't need her to finish. Before I lose my mind, that's what they were banking on, wasn't it? That I'd be declared incompetent or too forgetful to manage my assets. They wanted my house early. My stomach twisted. I thought about confronting them right then, storming down the stairs, brandishing the forged deed, demanding an explanation, but something told me to wait. They had no idea I was listening. If I bided my time, I might learn more. Sure enough. Jade pulled out her phone. I'll text Gideon, she said. Let him know we'll handle it tonight. Mom will sign eventually if we keep reminding her. She won't even remember she did. That was it, confirmation they'd conspired to forge my name or coerce me into signing away my house. My blood went cold, every shred of motherly warmth replaced by a fury that boiled in my chest. I pressed a hand to my mouth, stifling a wave of emotion that felt dangerously close to heartbreak. I made a silent vow. They may see me as a confused old lady, but I was their mother first, and they'd just woken the mother bear. They left soon after, likely spooked by the dark hush of the house. I waited until the door clicked shut and the car engine faded before I descended. The place felt tainted, like their whispers had seeped into the walls. My reflection in the hallway mirror met my gaze, and I was shocked by the grim determination I saw. For the first time in a long time, I welcomed that feeling. If they wanted a fight, they'd get one, but not in the way they expected. I remembered an old friend from my paralegal days. Her name was Tamara Lowe, now an elder law specialist. We lost touch after Wallace died, but if anyone could help me navigate the murky legal waters of property disputes and power of attorney nightmares, it was Tamara. I fetched my phone from the kitchen counter, noticing my hand trembled slightly. Fear or adrenaline? I wasn't sure. When Tamara picked up, it felt as if no time had passed. Her bright voice steadied something deep inside me. After I poured out the entire story, my suspected mild cognitive impairment, the forged deed overhearing Jade and Rowan discussing my property value, Tamara paused. Then she said, "Harriet, I've seen this before. You do exactly as I say. Do not sign anything else. Let me handle this quietly. Don't let them know you've caught on yet." I didn't sleep well that night. I kept picturing Jade's calculating eyes, Rowan's uncertain expression, and Gideon's stony confidence. I imagined the home Wallace and I built turning into a commodity for them, a mere dollar sign. Then out of nowhere, an old memory surfaced. Jade at 6 begging me to let her paint the fence. Pink Gideon at 4 insisting on wearing a tie for the first day of preschool. Rowan at 2 refusing to sleep unless I rocked him in my arms. How had we come to this, strangers in the same house, alliances formed in the shadows? Part of me felt guilt, wondering if I'd failed them somehow. The rest of me, fierce, protective, and outraged, knew I had to protect what was mine, even if that meant protecting it from them. The next morning, I awoke early and noticed a message on my phone, Gideon requesting that we all meet for Sunday dinner to discuss important family matters. The nerve. They'd chosen Sunday because that was the day Wallace and I used to gather everyone for pot roast and quiet conversation. My guess was they wanted to use sentimentality as a Trojan horse, but I had my own plan. Tamara and I devised a strategy: gather concrete evidence of their fraudulent intent, and then block any attempt they made to seize the house. She set up an appointment with a reputable financial advisor who specialized in elder care. We'd ironclad my assets in a trust, so even if I did forget my own name, nobody could just swoop in and loot my life savings or my house. I spent the day tidying, thinking, reflecting on the countless memories saturating these walls. The swirl of Rowan's toy cars on the floor, Jade's small footprints across the kitchen after she'd splashed in rain puddles outside, Gideon's voice reading from his storybooks with a seriousness beyond his years. All those moments felt overshadowed now, ill-painted in betrayal's color, yet beneath that heartbreak a new determination glowed. I wouldn't let them rewrite my life's work into their payday. If they wanted a puppet, they'd realize too late that the strings were cut. That night before drifting off, I did something I hadn't in a while. I picked up the old photo album from beneath my bed. Inside were pictures of Wallace, me, and the kids at various ages. A wave of nostalgia and sorrow crashed over me, but I let it pass. Then I closed the album, exhaled slowly, and reminded myself that love sometimes comes with painful lessons. My children's choices were their own, and I had to face the consequences of letting them believe I'd always be an easy mark. I turned out the light, already steeling myself for Sunday dinner. One way or another, I would make them understand that Harriet Holloway was nobody's fool. The scent of burnt garlic greeted me on Sunday afternoon as I tried to replicate Wallace's old pot roast recipe. My sense of smell wasn't what it used to be, and I'd left the skillet on high a bit too long. Still, the house smelled lived and warm, if a bit charred. I smoothed down my blouse, checking myself in the reflective glass of a framed family photo on the wall. My silver hair was tightly coiled in that practical bun, a style that said I'm all business. Because tonight, that was precisely what this dinner would be. By 5 o'clock, Jade arrived first, just as I expected. She wore a crisp white blouse, black slacks, and her bob was styled to perfection. "Hi, Mom," she sang out with feigned sweetness. I forced a polite smile and led her into the living room. Before she could start prying, Gideon entered. He wore an expensive suit, hair parted neatly, cologne so potent I could smell it from the foyer. "Mother," he greeted me with a curt nod, slipping his phone into his pocket. Last, Rowan ambled in wearing a casual sweater and jeans ponytail, slightly messy like he'd just rolled out of bed. We gathered around the dining table, the roast centerpiece surrounded by mashed potatoes, roasted carrots, and a rather pitiful attempt at homemade rolls. No one commented on the smell of singed garlic, but the air was thick with tension. Jade cleared her throat. "Thank you for making dinner, Mom. We thought it might be nice to have a family talk." Oh, I feigned ignorance about what Gideon tapped the table, each finger a silent countdown. "We've been talking, Mom. We think it's time to settle your affairs early. You've mentioned, after all, that you're forgetting things. This way, everything is in order." Rowan piped up, trying for a casual tone. "You know, so you don't have to worry about the details. We can take care of it." I raised my brows, placing my fork down deliberately. "Ah, so you'd like to help me manage my life. And what exactly does that entail?" Jade slid a folder across the table, her polished nails tapping its surface. Just a simple signature or two. I opened the folder, my stomach churning, a legal document, transfer of deed. There it was again, that same county clerk seal, that same line for my signature. My throat felt tight, but I forced a serene smile. "And this would do." "What exactly?" Jade answered, her voice too bright. "Just ensures the house is in our names. So if anything happens, if you get too sick to make decisions, there's no confusion. You've always said you didn't want to be a burden." Gideon nodded, his tone authoritative. "We'd handle the financial responsibilities, any repairs, property taxes. It's in your best interest, really." Rowan busied himself with his napkin, not meeting my gaze. That moment of guilt in his eyes only steeled my resolve. For a second, the memory of him as a toddler flashed in my mind, wide-eyed and full of wonder at every leaf, every bug, every moment. Now he couldn't even look at me when participating in a conspiracy. I pushed the folder back, folded my hands. "I appreciate your concern, children, but I'm not ready to sign anything right now." Jade stiffened. "Mom, you're making this harder than it has to be." I leveled a calm gaze at her. "I know exactly how hard it can be." Then I turned to Gideon. "I suspect you've already spoken to a realtor, have you not?" A flicker of alarm crossed his face. "How I mean I consult with many professionals in my line of work?" A heavy silence descended thick as wool. The walls felt like they were closing, and each photograph of our family vibrating with unspoken tension. I picked up my water glass, took a deliberate sip. "Until further notice," I said, "this house remains with me." That was all I offered, but it was enough to set the tone. We spent the rest of the meal in stilted conversation about the weather, new coffee shops in town, and Rowan's on and off attempts at freelancing as a graphic designer. When they finally left, none of them offered a hug. I stood at the door, dishes unwashed behind me, and felt the chill in my bones. They were planning to wear me down, and I needed to be ready. 2 days later, I found myself sitting in a cramped exam room at Dr. Alvarez's office for a follow-up on my mild cognitive impairment. The walls were that dull clinical beige I had on a thin paper gown that rustled every time I shifted. My reflection in the mirror above the sink was unflattering, silver hair frizzing at the edges of my bun, worry lines etched deep in my forehead. Dr. Alvarez was kind but firm. She ran another memory test, common phrases to recall, random numbers repeated back. I did my best, but stress had me fumbling. She tapped her pen against the clipboard. Your results suggest that while there has been a slight decline, you're still very much capable of making decisions. However, Harriet, it's crucial to set legal safeguards in place. A bitter laugh slipped out before I could stop it. Trust me, I'm working on it. As I drove home, the clouds overhead seemed to mirror my mood, thick and gray. I remembered reading something once about how high-stakes family conflicts sometimes happen in slow motion each day, bringing a deeper betrayal until finally there's a tipping point. Was that dinner the tipping point, or was there worse to come? I pulled into the driveway, noticing Jade's sleek black sedan parked along the curb. Panic flared, but I steadied my heart. Tamara's words played in my head. Don't let them know you suspect more than they think. So I plastered on a polite smile and stepped out. Jade was on my porch phone in hand. She looked up, eyes bright with forced concern. Hey, Mom, I tried calling. I feigned confusion, tapping my phone. Must have been on silent while I was with Dr. Alvarez. She rushed forward. You went to the doctor again. Is everything okay? You should have told me. I would have gone with you. The act was good. I had to admit I almost believed her sincerity until I remembered that forged signature. I'm fine, I said softly. Just a checkup. Nothing to worry about. In her eyes, I saw something flicker relief, or maybe disappointment that I hadn't come back with a worse diagnosis. My anger smoldered beneath my calm facade. Let her think I'm none the wiser. One day soon, she'd understand I was wise enough. Where are you listening from, dear friend? I'm here in my cozy little studio in Vermont. Leave a comment and don't forget to subscribe if this story touched your heart. Jade insisted on coming inside, so I led her through the living room. The house was neat, but the tension was palpable. She talked about trivial things. Her job at the marketing firm, a new restaurant she'd tried, how Gideon was working on something big in real estate. I nodded politely, offering tea, but not the usual cookies. My nerves were too frayed for small acts of hospitality. After a few minutes, Jade cleared her throat, glancing around like she expected a hidden camera. Mom, you know we only want what's best for you, right? She tucked a stray hair behind her ear, the bob still immaculate. I worry about how you're handling things. It's a big house for one person. Don't you think it might be easier if we took on the responsibility? I stirred my tea slowly, letting the spoon clink against the ceramic. I'm handling things just fine. Besides, if I ever do need help, I'll be sure to let you know. My voice was gentle, but the underlying message was clear. Not yet. Jade sighed, drumming her manicured nails on the table. You're making a mistake. We've consulted professionals, financial planners, estate attorneys. They say it's best to have these matters sorted early, especially if... She paused, lowering her gaze to the swirling tea in her cup. If you start forgetting more. A surge of heat rose in my chest. I appreciate your worry, I said calmly, but I'm not signing my life away on the basis of a maybe. Her face hardened. Fine, but don't say we didn't warn you. Jade stood abruptly, the chair scraping the floor. She grabbed her purse, inhaled like she had more to say, then strode to the door without finishing her thought. I watched her leave the silhouette of her car, disappearing down the street. I realized my hand was shaking when I reached to pick up the teaspoon. They were closing in, each playing a role in a drama they'd scripted without me. I was the confused old mother, conveniently losing her grip on reality. That script was about to get a rewrite, and it wasn't going to be the ending they expected. That afternoon, I opened the dusty old file cabinet Wallace and I had kept tucked in the garage. Everything from birth certificates to property tax records was in there. With Tamara's help, I intended to reorganize my entire estate plan, my willpower of attorney living trust. If my children thought I'd just stand by while they orchestrated a takeover, they had another thing coming. Midway through the stack, I froze, wedged between some life insurance statements and old medical bills. I spotted a set of documents that didn't belong. They were in an unmarked manila folder, the pages inside dated some 12 years ago. My heart kicked into overdrive when I recognized the name. On top, Stanley McAdams. My father he'd passed about 15 years back, leaving behind a modest trust meant for me when my mother eventually died. I assumed the funds were minimal, or that I'd use them for Wallace's care in his final years. But I'd never touched them, had I? I thumbed through the pages, breath hitching. The trust was much larger than I'd ever known. My father hadn't been wealthy, but he'd invested well. By the time my mother passed, it had accrued a substantial sum. Yet here was a record indicating the funds had been claimed in full. My stomach dropped when I saw the signature that authorized the claim. It was mine, but again it wasn't rage. Betrayal, heartbreak warred within me. The date on the document lined up with a period when Gideon, my middle child, had faced financial troubles, steep business losses, talk of bankruptcy. Had he stolen my inheritance from my father to bail himself out? It was unthinkable. Yet the evidence was right there in black and white, hands shaking. I tucked the folder under my arm. This was bigger than property lines or mortgages. This was about my children systematically undermining me for years. If Gideon had done this once, had he done it again, and had Jade and Rowan known? I locked up the file cabinet, heart pounding. My father had trusted me, and I'd trusted my children. Now it seemed no trust was left unbroken. Part of me wanted to scream, but a stronger part demanded quiet fury. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction of my tears. The next morning, I met Tamara at a quiet cafe near the courthouse. She arrived in a tailored suit, hair in a neat chignon, always put together, always a step ahead. Over coffee, I slid the folder across to her, explaining what I'd found. Her mouth set in a hard line. Harriet, I'm sorry to say this is textbook financial exploitation. She jotted notes, face grim. Here's what we'll do. We'll file an immediate revocation of any previously signed powers of attorney. We'll set up a new living trust that places a protective barrier around your assets, and we can send a cease and desist to your children, letting them know you're aware of the forgery. My heart stuttered at the thought. A letter like that, it's an all-out war. Tamara softened her tone. Harriet, this is already a war. They've just been fighting it in the shadows. You can't let them win by default. I nodded, feeling a strange mixture of sorrow and resolve. As Tamara headed off to gather the necessary paperwork, I lingered with my coffee, staring out the window at people rushing by. Could they sense the heartbreak I was carrying? Or did they see just another older woman sipping her latte? Maybe to the world, my struggle was invisible, but not for long. That afternoon, I returned home to finalize the documents Tamara prepared. I spent hours meticulously checking every line, making sure no loophole remained. By dusk, exhaustion weighed on me like a heavy coat. Still, I felt oddly triumphant. I was building a new wall of protection, brick by paper brick. As if on cue, my phone buzzed. A text from Rowan. Mom, can we talk in person? I stared at the screen, my heart twinging with the memory of how soft his voice used to be when he wanted comfort as a child. But I couldn't let nostalgia weaken me. I texted back a single word. Tomorrow I spent the evening in a haze of old memories, flashes of laughter and bedtime stories, wondering how we'd all come to this. Once upon a time, I would have done anything for my kids. Now, I had to protect myself from them. Rowan arrived at my doorstep the following afternoon. He carried a paper bag of pastries, hair in that casual ponytail, eyes darting as though expecting Jade or Gideon to appear behind him. Mom, he began the moment I opened the door. I, I just wanted to talk about everything. Alone. I let him in though, I kept my expression neutral. In the living room, he set the pastries down on the coffee table. I got your favorite apple turnovers. The gesture stung, reminding me of simpler days. How thoughtful, I said quietly. He settled into the armchair, elbows on his knees. Look, I know we've been pushing you. Jade and Gideon think it's for the best. But Mom, I'm not sure anymore. I raised a brow. Not sure about what? He licked his lips nervously, signing the house over. Everything feels like it's moving so fast, and it's not. It's not that I want your house. Mom, I just don't want to see you hurt if something happens. I studied him, searching his eyes for sincerity. Rowan, do you really believe forging my signature is helping me? His eyes widened, urging, Wait, what do you? I held up a hand. Don't lie. I found the documents. I know about the real estate agent. I know about the attempt to claim Grandpa Stanley's trust. And I know someone forged my name on a deed transfer. The question is, how much did you know? Rowan's posture collapsed like a deflated balloon. I didn't forge anything, he whispered. That was Gideon and Jade's idea. They said if you refused to sign, we could just formalize it later. But they never told me about your father's trust money. My anger flared, but I kept it in check. Why didn't you stop them? He buried his face in his hands, hair falling forward. I tried to push back, but Jade said you were slipping fast, that it was only a matter of time before you forgot who we were. Gideon promised me a cut of the profit. If we sold the house early, I'm not proud of it. I sat silently heartsick. Rowan's confession wasn't a total absolution, but it confirmed my worst fears. My own children had colluded to treat me like a stepping stone. Now at least one of them felt a flicker of remorse. Too little, too late. After Rowan left, I sank onto the sofa, exhaustion gripping my bones. He'd offered a half apology, half justification. It was better than nothing, but it didn't erase the betrayal. I replayed his words in my head. Jade said you were slipping fast. The casual cruelty of that phrasing gnawed at me. They'd taken my medical concerns, twisted them into a justification for theft. I remembered the last real family moment we'd had right after Wallace's funeral. We gathered in this same living room, each child holding a photograph of him. Jade kept the photo from their father-daughter dance. Gideon clutched one of Wallace teaching him to ride a bike. Rowan had a snapshot of Wallace reading him a bedtime story. Despite our grief, we'd laughed at the silly faces and old pictures. That day they promised to take care of me, be there for me. Funny how quickly that promise morphed into taking care of themselves. The truth was unstoppable now. Jade and Gideon wanted the house in their names, maybe to flip it, maybe to rent it, or who knew what, Rowan. While complicit didn't have the same stomach for deception, but even that glimmer of guilt wouldn't clear him of wrongdoing in my eyes. I retrieved the manila folder from my office, reviewing the forged documents once more. My name, Harriet Holloway, scrawled in a flourish, so suspiciously neat that anyone who truly knew my writing would question it. Yet official eyes might accept it if there was no challenge. That was how they'd hoped to get away with it quietly behind the scenes. My memory issues served as both their alibi and their weapon. But I wasn't alone. I had Tamara, my own cunning, and decades of experience reading the fine print. My father's voice echoed in my head. A predator counts on your silence. If my children wanted silence, they'd find none. I'd speak loudly, clearly, and back every word with the law. For the first time in weeks, I felt a calm wash over me. I wasn't powerless. My mind might occasionally slip, but my resolve was stronger than ever. They wanted my house early. Suddenly I was back in the will all right, but this time it was my own. The next day I drove to Tamara's office downtown. It was a modest suite on the third floor of a building that smelled of lemon disinfectant. An anxious energy. I found Tamara hunched over a stack of paperwork, tapping her pen with methodical precision. She gestured for me to sit, then flipped through the trust documents. Here's the plan, she said, eyes keen. We file a revocation of any existing power of attorney forms that might be floating around. We create a new living trust with you as the sole trustee, meaning you control everything. And we add a backup trustee who isn't one of your children, someone impartial. That might be me or a professional fiduciary, whichever you prefer. I nodded, glancing at the thick legal packets in front of me. It felt overwhelming but also protective. Each page was like a brick in the fortress I was building around my life. Tamara, what about the theft of my father's trust? Can we do anything about that after all these years? She pursed her lips. We can certainly present evidence of fraud, though the statute of limitations could be tricky. If Gideon forged your signature, that's a criminal offense, but you have to decide how far you're willing to go. A swirl of emotions caught in my throat. Taking legal action against my child. It felt unnatural, like betraying every maternal instinct, but he had betrayed me first. Let's keep that in our back pocket, I said finally, as leverage if necessary. Tamara nodded. I'll get everything filed. You'll sign these affidavits, and I'll expedite the process. Once it's official, the house and all your assets will be safe. Even if your children think you've signed something else, it won't matter. Relief and sadness collided in my chest. I never imagined the day would come when I'd have to defend myself from my own children. But as Wallace used to say, sometimes the ones closest to you can hurt you the most. I took the pen Tamara offered and added my real signature to the forms, reaffirming my identity in more ways than one. By the time I got home, the autumn sun was setting, painting the sky in streaks of orange and purple. I wondered, not for the first time, how Wallace would have handled all this. Would he have seen it coming? Would the kids have dared to pull such stunts if he were still alive? The questions spiraled, but I forced them aside. Dwelling on what-ifs wouldn't fix the here and now. I stepped through the front door to find a note slipped under the welcome mat. Stop making this difficult. We're your family. No signature, but I knew who wrote it. Jade's penmanship was as unmistakable as mine. Or at least it was once upon a time. My jaw clenched. The manipulative tone made my stomach churn. Inside, I placed the note on my kitchen table, next to a photograph of me and Wallace dancing at Jade's wedding. She looked so happy in that picture, hair pinned in an elegant updo, eyes shining with love for the father who walked her down the aisle. My chest tightened. Love didn't just vanish, did it? Maybe it twisted into something unrecognizable. When ambition overshadowed gratitude, I decided to call Rowan. He might be the only one who'd speak honestly. He picked up after 3 rings. Voice-heavy mom. Rowan, we need to talk. If you truly want to help me, I need you to come clean. Tell me everything you know about Jade and Gideon's plans. He sighed. They want the house listed by the end of the year. Mom, there's a developer interested in buying up multiple properties in the neighborhood. Big profit. I think Gideon's already promised the developer he can deliver yours. Jade's in on it, something about flipping it, reselling, who knows. They're not telling me all the details, probably because they know I'm shaky about it. I closed my eyes, the weight of betrayal settling more heavily. Thank you for telling me, I whispered. Don't breathe a word of this to them. I have a plan. A long pause, and then Rowan said, I'm sorry, Mom. I exhaled softly. Sorry was a start, but it wouldn't erase what had been done. I spent the next week quietly tying off loose ends. First, I changed the locks on my doors. It felt both empowering and heartbreaking. My own children no longer had a key. Then I visited the bank, transferring funds into the newly established trust. Tamara set up, making sure not a cent could be siphoned by unauthorized hands. I updated my will entirely. The new version removed Jade, Gideon, and Rowan as default beneficiaries, replacing them with a structured disbursement that required accountability for all 3. If they wanted my assets, they'd have to prove they cared for me. In my final days, not sabotage me, After that, I called the home insurance provider to confirm coverage would remain solely under my name. The agent seemed perplexed. Are you expecting a policy change? He asked. We got a preliminary inquiry from someone claiming to be your power of attorney. Gideon, no doubt, I assured him no changes were authorized. By the end of that week, I was exhausted but determined. Each step felt like reclaiming a piece of myself, a piece they tried to steal through deception. I thought about my father, how he'd be proud that I wasn't letting them railroad me. He grew up in a time when children respected their parents' legacy, not tried to plunder it. In moments of weakness, I still felt that tug of guilt, wondering what kind of mother I was to set legal pitfalls for my own offspring. But the deeper truth remained. A real mother protects her children from harm, and sometimes that harm might be self-inflicted. If they wanted a lesson in responsibility, they were about to get it. On a Sunday morning, I woke with a renewed sense of purpose. Tamara had arranged everything for me to finalize the trust documents at the courthouse on Monday. After that, the house would be untouchable unless I explicitly chose otherwise. If Jade or Gideon tried forging another signature, they'd be forging their way into a legal quagmire. I looked around the kitchen at the faint scorch mark on the countertop from the day I found the forged deed. It reminded me how easily life could change in a flash, how a small flame could become a raging fire, but I had learned to extinguish it Sunday evening. I received a call from Gideon. My heart tensed at the sight of his name on the caller ID, but I swallowed my trepidation and answered, "Hello, Mom?" he said in that cool, deliberate voice. "We need to meet tomorrow." "I'm busy tomorrow," I lied. "What's this about?" He sighed dramatically as though I was the unreasonable one. "About the deed. We've got a buyer lined up, and if we act now, we can lock in an incredible price. This could secure your future and ours." I nearly laughed at his choice of words. Secure my future by stealing my present. Instead, I asked, "So you already have a buyer for my house?" "Gideon." There was a short pause. "Look, you'll be taken care of. We can arrange a smaller condo for you, maybe assisted living if your condition progresses. Don't you want to be free of the burden of maintaining a big house?" His tone, his arrogance, it took all my restraint not to hurl the phone across the room. "I'll think about it," I managed, voice tight. "But tomorrow won't work for me. I have errands to run." "Well, don't wait too long," he warned. "Opportunities like this don't last." Then he hung up. My hands shook as I set the phone down. Opportunities, that's all I was now. A potential profit margin. I stared out the window, the night sky black as ink, stars hidden behind clouds. Wallace once told me that every star in the sky was a guardian watching over us. I wondered if he was up there seeing how our children turned out. Would he be angry? Devastated, or maybe he'd see it as a twisted sign of the times. I turned out the lights in the living room, the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen, a lonely lullaby. In the darkness, I pressed a hand to my chest, feeling the steady thump of my heart. I was alive. I was thinking clearly, and I was going to end this fiasco on my terms. Tomorrow would be the final step once I filed those documents at the courthouse. Their so-called buyer would find themselves out of luck. Early Monday morning. I dressed in my best navy suit, an outfit I rarely wore since Wallace's funeral. It felt like armor now. My hair pinned in that same low bun. I added a light touch of makeup, wanting to face the day, looking and feeling my best. Then I drove downtown to the county courthouse, each mile a step away from vulnerability and toward empowerment. Tamara met me in the marble-lined hallway outside the clerk's office. She flashed a confident smile. "Ready as I'll ever be," I said, summoning a steady breath. Filing the final set of documents was surprisingly quick. We submitted the new trust paperwork complete with notarized affidavits confirming my competency. We officially revoked any previously granted power of attorney to my children. After the clerk stamped the forms, Tamara squeezed my shoulder. "Congratulations, Harriet. You just built a fortress." Thank you, I replied, voice trembling with a mixture of relief and sorrow. I couldn't have done it without you. On my way back to the car, my phone rang. It was Jade. I let it go to voicemail. Almost immediately, Gideon called next, then Rowan. A flurry of attempts to reach me. I guessed they'd gotten wind that something was happening. Perhaps the realtor they'd lined up had called them complaining that the property wasn't as available as they'd claimed. Good, I thought, let them panic. I paused at a small cafe near the courthouse, indulging in a hot chocolate. It felt almost celebratory. The whipped cream melted slowly, swirling into the drink. I recalled simpler times taking Jade for hot chocolate after her first dance recital, Gideon wanting to try coffee at age 14, Rowan sneaking whipped cream from the fridge. Memories battered my heart, but I stood firm. The children they were and the adults they'd become were two different realities, and I had to protect myself from the latter. That evening, I got home to find 5 missed calls and 3 texts from each child. I didn't respond to any of them. Let them wonder. Let them stew. For once, their mother wasn't waiting on the doorstep with open arms and an open checkbook. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. And if you feel like staying a little longer with me, don't forget to subscribe. It truly means the world. Night fell softly over the house that had seen decades of laughter, tears, and now betrayal. I walked the halls running my hand along the wallpaper. Wallace and I picked out in the early years of our marriage, tiny floral patterns that we'd once argued over. He thought it was too busy, but eventually conceded, calling it cozy. I paused at each framed photo. Jade's high school graduation, Gideon's first day at college, Rowan's track meet where he took second place, but smiled like he'd won gold. Each memory was a testament to the love I'd poured into raising them. Somewhere along the way, that love was weaponized against me. They believed my motherly devotion meant I'd simply roll over and capitulate when they presented me with a forgery disguised as concern. They miscalculated. My phone rang again, Gideon for the 6th time that night. This time I answered, "Mother, you need to meet with us," he demanded, voice brimming with tension. "We heard from the clerk's office that you've done something with the deed. You're jeopardizing your own security." I took a steadying breath. "Is that what I'm doing, Gideon?" "It seems to me I'm just preventing someone from stealing my house," he sputtered, caught off guard by my directness. "No one's stealing, Mom. You're not thinking straight. You have memory problems." My anger flared. Yes, I might be forgetful sometimes, but I don't forget my own children plotting behind my back. "I'm not signing anything, and don't you dare come here unannounced." I ended the call before he could spew more excuses. My pulse throbbed in my temples, but a strange calm followed. It was done. Everything was sealed. I could lose every short-term memory I had, and my assets would still be safe from them. Alone in the dimly lit hallway, I pulled out an old photo from my pocket. It was Wallace holding Jade as a baby. I traced their faces gently. "Guess I did okay." "Huh," I murmured to the silent house. The tears that threatened finally came, but they felt clean, a release of grief I'd stored for years. I whispered goodnight to the memories determined to face tomorrow with unshakable resolve. Morning light filtered through the curtains, softening the bedroom's edges. Over the next few days, the calls and texts kept coming, frantic, pleading, sometimes angry. Jade accused me of letting outsiders manipulate me. Gideon threatened legal action, ironically ignoring that the real legal threat was aimed at him. Rowan apologized for everything, but also tried to persuade me to give them a chance to sort things out. I offered them no real answers. Each time my reply was vague. "I've handled my affairs. Respect my decisions." Then I'd hang up or set my phone on silent. In the hush that followed, I found clarity. They wanted me vulnerable, but I was far from it. One evening, there was a knock at the door. I peered through the window, Rowan holding a bouquet of daisies. I almost didn't open it, but part of me needed to see if he'd changed. "Mom." he said softly, thrusting the flowers at me. I'm sorry for everything. I was scared. Gideon convinced me that you'd be better off if we took control now, before you deteriorated. Jade saw dollar signs, sure, but she also wants you in a safe place. We all do safe place, I thought, like a kennel. I forced a tight smile, and forging my name is how you show concern. He had the decency to look ashamed. I didn't sign your name, Mom. Gideon did, or maybe Jade helped. I won't lie, I knew about it, but I never wanted to hurt you. The daisies swayed in his grip, their white petals trembling. Once he'd given me daisies on Mother's Day, claiming they were the happiest flowers. Now they felt like a bandage over a knife wound, I sighed, stepping back to let him in. Rowan, I'm too old to mince words. I've sealed my trust. My assets are protected, and this house is no longer yours to gamble with. If you truly love me, you'll respect that. His eyes glistened. I do love you, Mom. I nodded, tired, then act like it, because no matter how you spin it, what you three did was theft of my peace, my legacy, and my faith in you. Some things can't just be forgiven with a bouquet of daisies. Over the following weeks, word got out. Small towns have a way of amplifying gossip. Neighbors started asking questions. Rumors circulated that the Holloway kids were trying to put their mother in a home and sell off her property. Some of it was exaggerated, some spot on. The local newspaper even reached out for a human interest piece on elder financial abuse. I refused the interview, not wanting to wash all my family's dirty laundry in public, but the mere inquiry rattled Jade and Gideon, whose reputations as a marketing executive and a real estate agent respectively hinged on a certain image of respectability. I heard Jade lost a couple of big clients after whispers circulated that she'd attempted to finagle her mother's assets. Gideon likewise faced hushed skepticism from his investor circles. He tried calling me multiple times, probably to do damage control, but I let his voicemails pile up. They were the verbal equivalent of frantic press releases, promises, justifications, half apologies. None of it reached my heart anymore. Meanwhile, Tamara informed me that the legal shield we'd put in place was ironclad. If they wanted to dispute it, they'd face an uphill battle proving I was incompetent, which my latest medical evaluation wouldn't support. For now, the storm seemed to be passing. In the quiet aftermath, I found myself thinking about the future. If my memory truly failed one day, would I want to stay in this big house alone? Perhaps not. But I decide that on my own terms. The betrayal remained a raw wound, one that might never fully heal. Yet, ironically, it reminded me that I was still very much alive, capable of fighting for myself, forging a new path if I chose. One afternoon, a letter arrived in the mail. No return address, but the neat handwriting belonged to Jade. I nearly tossed it out of spite, but some part of me needed to know. Inside was a single page, Mom. I realize we did wrong. I hope one day you'll understand. We were trying to protect you poorly. Yes, but our intention wasn't to hurt you. I'm sorry. No signature, just her name scrawled at the bottom. I read it twice, then set it on the kitchen counter, uncertain whether it offered closure or merely salted the wound. Maybe both. In the weeks that followed, I made a monumental decision. I contacted a local women's shelter, one that specialized in helping older women facing homelessness or abuse. The notion might have seemed extreme, but after seeing how close I'd come to losing everything I wanted, my home, my fortress of memories, to become a place of refuge for those who needed it most. The director, a kind woman named Sharon with short curly hair and bright eyes, welcomed me into her small office. It was cluttered with donation bins, blankets, and boxes of toiletries. She explained how many women over 60 find themselves suddenly homeless or financially trapped, often due to family betrayals, spousal abuse, or medical crises. My chest tightened with empathy. My story could have ended that way if I hadn't fought back. when I told her I was considering donating my property to be converted into transitional housing for older women. Sharon's eyes welled with tears. "This would change lives," she whispered. "Are you sure I am?" I replied softly. "My children wanted it to be an investment. I want it to be a home, especially for those who might have no one else." Of course, the details were more complex than a simple handover. Tamara would handle the legal aspects, ensuring I could still live here if I chose, but with a plan for the property to transfer fully to the shelter upon my passing, or my decision to move into assisted living on my own terms. Driving back, I felt a mix of sadness and liberation. The house once symbolized my entire life's work, a gift I intended to leave my children, but they showed me they didn't value it as the sanctuary I believed it to be. So I'd give it to those who would. Maybe Jade and Gideon would accuse me of spite, or Rowan would see it as a radical choice. Let them. I was done living in fear of their judgments. I might forget dates, names, or even how I liked my tea sometimes, but I would never forget how my children had orchestrated my near ruin. And so I chose to turn that near ruin into a chance for someone else's salvation. The day the final paperwork for the shelter agreement was signed, I felt lighter than I had in years. The fact that I still held a life estate, meaning I could live in the house as long as I chose, gave me a sense of dignity. But knowing that eventually this place would become a haven for vulnerable women filled me with peace. My father, Stanley, would have approved. He always believed in helping those who couldn't help themselves. Word traveled fast. Jade and Gideon left furious messages claiming I was throwing away the family legacy. Rowan showed up on my porch again, this time, not with flowers, but with tears in his eyes. "Mom, how could you do this?" "We grew up here. Don't you want to keep it in the family?" I met his gaze. "Family, Rowan. Where was family when you all tried to cheat me out of my own home? Where was family when Gideon stole my father's trust? If the house means that much to you, you should have cherished it, not plotted to sell it out from under me." He shifted uncomfortably, but I apologized. "We all make mistakes." I shook my head, compassion edging into my voice. "I forgive you for your part, Rowan. But forgiveness doesn't mean returning to the same situation. Forgiveness is about letting go, and I'm letting go of the dream that this house will stay in our bloodline. I'm giving it to those who need it more than any of you ever did." He opened his mouth to protest, then closed it, tears tracking down his cheeks. "I'm so sorry," he whispered. I didn't doubt his sorrow, but I no longer had a reason to trust him unconditionally. When he left, I stood on the porch, staring at the yard where Wallace used to mow the lawn, the driveway where Gideon learned to ride a bike, the front stoop where Jade posed in her prom dress. Every blade of grass, every crack in the pavement carried an echo of love and memory. Now it would echo new stories, new people seeking shelter and hope. And that I realized was a legacy worth leaving behind. I closed out my week at the lawyer's office, finalizing small details. Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I treated myself to a quiet dinner at my favorite Italian bistro. The soft clink of wine glasses, the aroma of fresh basil, and the gentle hum of distant chatter wrapped me in warmth. I chose a seat by the window where the golden glow of street lamps reminded me of flickering candlelight. Over a plate of fettuccine, Alfredo let myself savor the moment. No demands, no forged papers, no heart-racing confrontations. In that peaceful space, I reflected on how far I'd come in just a few short months. My children thought they could outmaneuver an aging mind, but they forgot one crucial detail. I was still their mother, the woman who once juggled a career, maintained a household, and raised 3 kids with more grit and resourcefulness than they could imagine. As I sipped a glass of Merlot, I felt a gentle sorrow for the loss of innocence in our family, for the gap that might never close. Yet I also felt a small spark of liberation, knowing my father's inheritance was honored in spirit, Even if Gideon had stolen the funds, I'd taken the lesson and turned it into a shield for the vulnerable, and I knew Wallace would be proud that I'd refused to be silenced or played for a fool. After settling the check, I paused on the sidewalk, my breath pluming in the cool night air. Across the street, a mother held her child's hand, guiding them home. I smiled, remembering my own children's tiny hands in mine, how I'd taught them to cross safely. Life changes, memories shift, and people show you sides you'd rather not see. But if there's one truth I'll carry with me, for however long my mind remains sharp, it's this: no one can take your worth unless you hand it over. My children wanted my house early. Suddenly, I found myself back in the will, but on my own terms. And for once, I was perfectly okay with that. Thank you so much for joining us at her Fireside Stories. Harriet's journey shows us that it's never too late to reclaim your dignity and rewrite your story on your terms. It also serves as a powerful reminder that love can sometimes mean standing your ground, even when it hurts. What would you have done in Harriet's shoes? Do you think she made the right choice, or should family loyalty always come first? Share your thoughts in the comments and let us know from where you've been listening today. And if you loved this story, please subscribe and hit the notification bell so you won't miss any of our upcoming heartfelt and thought-provoking episodes. Until next time, stay strong, cherish your story, and never be afraid to stand your ground.